Shine with Kendéll Lenice. Real talk for real people. Let's shine together.
All right, welcome to Shine with Kendéll Lenice. I am your host, Kendéll Lenice. Allow me to introduce myself to you just a little bit further. I am a certified transformational life coach, speaker, and author, as well as a certified meditation practitioner and content creator. I'm so glad that you decided to join me on my life podcast. On this podcast, I will educate, elevate, and entertain you with various topics. We will do live coaching, and I will hopefully give you a different perspective on some of your favorite topics and introduce you to new ones. I'm not sure how you stumbled upon this podcast. I'm just so glad you did. Before we get started, do me a favor and subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening and rate if you are able to. Thank you so much once again for tuning in, and now on to this week's show. Don't forget to check out my daily blog. She blogs on livingtruelivingU.com. We'll be right back. Today's show is sponsored by 617 Lip Love, Organic Lip Moisturizer Balm by Kendéll Lenice. Get yours today at leniceboutique.com. This product is for men and women, and its signature flavor, eucalyptus mint. It's the bomb, y'all. Get it today at leniceboutique.com. Protect your lips, heal your lips at all costs. 617 Lip Love Organic Lip Moisturizer Balm. Get yours today at leniceboutique.com. Support Black businesses. Support women-owned businesses. leniceboutique.com. Hey everybody, it is Kendéll Lenice, and welcome to Shine with Kendéll Lenice. I'm not sure how you stumbled upon this podcast. I'm just so glad you did. If you are new to Shine with Kendéll Lenice, welcome y'all. Do me a favor and rate and comment if you can. I don't know where you're listening, whether it's Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you're listening. If you can rate this podcast and leave me a message, please do so. And to all my loyal listeners who continue to come back each and every show, I appreciate you all so much. I really, really, really do. I've been doing this thing for quite some time now. And when I don't do it, someone's like, that one person, all I need is a one person to say, oh, I missed your podcast this week. Did you do it this week? That means the world to me, because there's a lot of different podcasts out there. And this is a podcast where, as a life coach of 20 plus years, and as a woman with experiences and knowledge and background, I'm able to have those conversations with you. And, I'm a life coach at heart and a helper at heart, and my degree is in human services, which is a professional helper. So that's what I do, and that's what this podcast is all about. And just talking about real issues. Some days we'll act a fool up in here, and we will laugh and joke and play, and then it's serious topics and issues and concerns that are facing our everyday lives. This podcast is just not for Black people, African American people, but that's who I sometimes tailor it to, because that's who I am. That's my experience. My people matter. My people are important to me. So oftentimes you'll hear me talk about blanket statements and subjects that can affect everyone, but it is going to be personally by my perspective, but professionally it's going to be across the board. In certain subjects and things that I talk about, it is about the Black community, because that's who I am. I'll be 50 in June. Ain't no future in my front, and that's what it is. So I appreciate, everyone. And if you are not Black or African American or whatever you want to call it, and you're listening and you're enjoying it, I'm so glad you're here too. I'm glad that you're open to some of the conversations I may have, but life coaching is for everyone. and even men and, and women alike, because this is not just a woman's podcast. I'm a woman, but, this is a life podcast. This can help you. This can help your neighbors, your friends, your sisters, your brothers, your spouses, your children. It can help everybody. So that's what this is about. So go on and subscribe and share this episode and other episodes. I guarantee you, throughout this time that I've been doing this, and all of the old ones, I'm not doing it where, some charge you to get the exclusives, and the other ones. I've interviewed so many different people on here and had conversations with so many different people. So go back. I left them on purpose. Go back, and there's something that can benefit you and you can learn and grow from on this channel and all of these episodes. Also, if you're just tuning in and you're just meeting me for the first time, you'll get to know who I am too, because I share a lot of me within these podcasts as well. And also, for more about me, you can go to livingtruelivingyou.com. All right, that was the longest intro. I normally don't do a long intro if you are tuning in for the first time. All right, so today's show is about the rap legend, the dog himself, Dark Man X, DMX, Earl Simmons, and childhood trauma. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be celebrating the lives of DMX. I don't own the rights to his music, or I would be playing his music right now. But I can't, but I can still talk about him and I can still celebrate him. So if you're a fan of DMX, the man and the music, then you're not going to want to miss this show. If you are a human being who experienced childhood trauma, or you have children that may have experienced childhood trauma like Earl Simmons did, DMX, then you're going to want to tune in. But as always, let me start with this week's Life Note. All right, it's time for this week's Life Note. This week's Life Note is quite simple. Some children see a time in this world. Some children see a time in this world. Well, Kendell, what does that mean? Meaning some children go through hell before they're even the age of 2 or 3 or 5 or 8 or 10. Children see a hard time. And DMX is one of those children that's seen a hard time. But before we get into the trauma part, let's talk about Dark Man X, right? Now, a lot of people would be surprised, like, oh, you like DMX? I love DMX. Like I have even before this, read his autobiography. I'll talk about that in a moment. I had to put that down because that thing was, a lot. And that's where we're going to talk about the childhood trauma part. But let's talk about DMX and let's celebrate DMX right now. He was a beautiful soul. And if you've heard him pray before, oh my God, his prayers will shake up the dead. And I think I'm going to end with one of his prayers in this show with one of his prayers. His prayers were just out of this world, they touched your soul. They pierced your soul. And on my social media, I have been posting a lot about DMX and about how he is. And I just want to share some of that with you. Just, how I feel personally about DMX. Love DMX. Every now and then, someone that you've never met can pierce your soul in a way that no one else can. And both of the people, when you're talking about rappers and you're talking about personalities and what they're saying and how their spirits are and all of that, Tupac did that for me and DMX did that for me. Like, I don't care if DMX was speaking rough, talking hard, saying whatever he was saying, maybe vulgar, maybe not, but whatever it was always honest. It was always authentic. It was always him, and that's what draws you sometimes to people. His energy was so infectious to me and powerful that it jumped off the TV screen, whether it was in a video, whether he was having an interview with someone, whether he was on his social media dancing and singing and loving life. Every time you saw him on social media, He was dancing, he was in the car dancing to Michael Jackson or whoever and singing and just happy. He was a light, and he always put his, his little rough, get at me dog, movements and sound in, even if he was singing a song. But just watching him dance and watching him sing and try to sing and celebrate his life was a joy to see. Like, it was very encouraging and inspiring, and it's just, he had that magnetic effect. And as you saw on social media, if you haven't, so many people have met him and taken pictures with him and videos, and he was so gracious, and they were so excited to see and meet DMX, even if it was for a moment. He had that type of personality where he would have a lasting effect. And I'm bummed. I met a lot of celebrities in my day, been around them, taking pictures, did videos, interviews, all of that. But I never met DMX, ever. We're the same age, never met him, and I'm kind of sad about that, but everybody that knew him loved him. And Swiss Beats, who is his brother, his boy, his best friend, one of them, he left a heart-wrenching message for DMX on IG, and it was just, you can tell his eyes were puffy, and he had been crying, and then later in the video he said he cried 50 times before even making that. But he said, if DMX didn't mess with you, he ain't mess with you. But if he loved you, there was nothing that you could do about it. Because he said something like, if DMX didn't mess with you, he ain't mess with you. And there was nothing you could do about it. But if he loved you, and still there was nothing that you can do about it. And he was just talking about his philanthropy. People don't talk about that. His philanthropy, his humanitarianism, if you will. People that know him said that he didn't care about money. Swiss said that. Mashonda said that, which is Swiss's ex, and all the people that knew him, that he didn't care about money. He had money. Swiss said he had millions in the bank, and he didn't buy no car. He didn't buy necklaces and jewelry and wilding out with the money. He gave back. He gave back to children. He gave back to organizations. He gave back to people. He would sit with the homeless, Swiss said, and just have conversations with them, and he didn't care, because for the people that don't know, DMX sold records, millions, like 70 something million records. Like his one album, number one, the next one, number one, number two, he had number one albums. He was one of the biggest rappers out there. This is for the young people who are just really discovering DMX now. Like, he wasn't a slouch. Like, he was it. And then acting was natural to him, and the different projects that he did, commercials, sitcoms, movies, all of that. And I remember when I went to California, and we were going to the second annual BET Awards, right? And I was like, let's just get on a bus and drive around California, ride around. We did, and we stumbled across a movie that DMX was filming out there. And I was trying to get a glimpse of him. That was the closest I got to him, and in the car racing back and forth, but I didn't get a chance to see him. And I almost forgot about that. As I'm telling this story, I remember that day, and I'm just like, wow, but he just had that ability to, everybody that knew him, he had the ability to be vulnerable and to show love to people. And a lot of men, especially black men, don't have that privilege to do that, or they don't feel comfortable doing that. But just looking from the outside in and seeing how he interacted with Busta Rhymes, how he was hugging him tight, how he hugged Swiss tight, how he hugged like all of these men tight, and he was, very masculine, but still, vulnerable. And sometimes those words don't go together, but with him, they did. And people loved him. The women loved him. He had 15 kids, y'all. The women loved him, and he loved the women. But let's not forget about his ex-wife, Tashira, who we all know as the wife. They had several kids together, I believe 3 or 4, and they were married for 15 years, and she was there when he had nothing, and then all of the other mothers of his children, and he loved his kids from what I see. I can't speak personally, and his godchildren and everybody. He just was a spirit and a light, and certain people you just gravitate to them. It's something about it. Like whether you agree, disagree, right or wrong or whatever, it's the energy, it's that vibe, it's that pierces through your spirit. And that's really, how I felt with DMX for sure. Like he just seemed like one of those people that I would have loved to meet. And what's eerie is they're showing a lot of the videos, right, of DMX. And saying, his prayers and, if he left the earth today, he had a happy life. I heard him say that. And, when people do stuff like that, it's kind of cringe-worthy after they die. You're like, dang. Well, he did say that, but he lived to be 50 years old. And who knows if he thought with the life he led and the experience and the childhood he had, if he even thought that he would live that long. Now, if you know anything about life expectancy with black males, especially in the hood, then you know that the life expectancy is not long. So let's couple that with fame and drugs and alcohol and women and in the entertainment industry and the hood and all of that. Let's add all of that in the mix. Put that in a pot. Then he's probably happy that he even lived that long, or grateful or thankful, because he was very in tune with God. He was very in tune with prayer. He was very in tune with who he was and what his story was and the truths about his life, even if it made him cry, and I love that about DMX, that he wasn't closed mouth, and also he gave back. I love that. He was a dope dude. His spirit was just amazing. And I was just, even when they did the verses between him and Snoop Dogg, that was one of my favorite ones, because he was out there just loving his life and dancing and celebrating Snoop and hugging Snoop and just that dope kind of spirit. And I hadn't seen anything bad about him going around on social media. And I posted a lot about him, and people probably like, Kendéll Lenice likes DMX. I did. I really did. And it's about spirit and energy to me with a lot of people. And some people just connect like that. You never met them, but you just connect like that. And that's how it was. Now, saying all that, I don't know if I should take a break here before I go into the childhood trauma, because many of you experience trauma. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the little T traumas and the big T traumas, because when you hear trauma, people often think that it has to be super severe, or what they define as severe in their head. But childhood trauma and arrested development and all of that can be whatever happened to you in your childhood. But before we go into that, I just want to take a quick break, and I'll be right back. Are you stuck in an unhappy relationship or a dead-end job? Are you having difficulty moving to the next level in life? Are you looking for love or romance? Are you looking to achieve and accomplish your goals? Are you looking to get more clarity on your vision? Do you struggle with self-esteem? Are you looking for insight, trying to figure out what you're trying to do with your life? These are some of the things I can help you with. Hi, my name is Kendéll Lenice, and I'm a certified transformational life coach. For more information about my life coaching services, please visit livingtruelivingyou.com. Now back to the show. All right, and we are back, and I had my sip of kombucha, and I'm ready to continue. All right, so we're talking about DMX, and we're talking about childhood trauma. If you're just tuning in, this is recorded live. Even if you catch it on the playback, hopefully you start from the beginning. This won't be a super long show, but I definitely want to talk about some things here. All right. DMX and childhood trauma. So in 2002, DMX wrote a book called Earl, and along with Smokey Fontaine, and he shared a story with him, and they composed it in a beautiful autobiography, which I have on my bookshelf. And I posted my bookshelf as he died and was talking about the book, and so many people were like, well, where can I buy the book? Or I tried to look online, it's sold out. And where? I bought that from a bookstore because I told y'all I've been riding for DMX, so riding with him. And I bought that immediately when it came out in 2002. I love autobiographies, especially with people that fascinate me or I'm interested in. And I like to hear someone's story because despite everything that he went through, he had people fighting for him to succeed and to get his music out there, which are his thoughts and his feelings and his ideas out there. And he did. Irv Gotti was a big part of that. And then Rough Riders, all the Rough Riders family, and connecting with Swiss Beats and so many different people to get his music out there, and signing a Def Jam and all of that. But in that book, like some of that book I had to walk away from. And some parts I never even continued because, he starts with just him, being in Yonkers and his mom just treating him horribly and saying that they were going to visit this home and dropped him off at this boy's home and left and didn't come back. That's, one of the beginning things that happens in his life. So just imagine you have your mother and you're a young kid, not a grown kid, not a teenage kid, a young kid, and your mom takes you somewhere, and you think that your mom is taking you somewhere, and she drops you off, and you're at a juvenile home and never comes back, or just drops you there, and you don't know that that's where you're doing and that's where you're going to live. And then fast forward to when he was 14, his mentor gave him weed. He wasn't addicted to anything, gave him weed and laced the weed with cocaine. Who does that to a child? Those are just two things that have happened to him, and that's how his drug addiction started. So you got an innocent child that's not doing any of that. And then, you give him weed, and not only do you introduce him to weed, but you lace it with cocaine. And that addiction, like who does that to a child? Those are just two things that happen. And then you go through his life with everything else happening and the deaths that's happening in his life and his beloved grandmother, Miss Holloway, and everyone else. And, going through the things that have gone through childhood trauma that's happened to you, going, in and out your mind, and you can't sleep. He was known to not be able to sleep, and he was known to not be able to rest completely. And even Swiss said that he would go to jail just to find some sense of peace, because everything, you guys have to read that book if you can, or really just look up his story if you are interested. It's a lot, and people deal with a lot, and a lot of things happen to him as a child. So then you have a child that grows up to be an adult, but oftentimes, their development is arrested, or their trauma halts them from being all that they would like to be, or the trauma haunts them at night where they can't sleep. It's a lot. It's a lot. So you deal with that, and then you deal with everything else that you're dealing with. And that's where his addiction started. Now, they're saying that he passed away of a heart attack due to a drug overdose, but his family and close people are saying that's not true. And I know that he stopped doing drugs because he got heavy, and he said he stopped. He was kind of thin, and he got heavy, and they say sometimes, when you get off of the drugs that, he was using, that sometimes you gain weight, or you use food as a substitute or something like that. But he looked healthy, and he looked thick, and he had his little salt and pepper, beard going on. And 2 days before, he was in the car with his girlfriend doing a video, and they were like, well, does this look like somebody who would, have a drug overdose? So I don't know. I'm just telling you what people are saying, either way, he passed away, and a lot of people are hurt by it. A lot of people, are really mourning, people that have met him and people that have known him most of his life and all of his life. So let me just define childhood trauma for you. What is childhood trauma? So the National Institute of Mental Health defines childhood trauma as the experience of or event by a child that is emotionally painful or distressful, which often results in lasting mental and physical effects. I'm going to go on to say childhood trauma is an event experienced by a child that threatens their life or bodily integrity. Physical or sexual abuse, for example, can be clearly traumatic for a child. One-time events like a car accident or a natural disaster like a hurricane or medical trauma can psychologically take toll on a child as well. So, the latter are small T's. The big T's are the ones that we're talking about with DMX, and that's big T's, meaning the trauma behind it all. So there are so many people out here dealing with trauma and dealing with issues as a child, and they don't know how to handle it as an adult, or they're unable to handle it as an adult. What is trauma? Acute trauma, okay, is 4 types of trauma. Acute trauma is the results from a single stressful or dangerous event. That's acute trauma. Then we have chronic trauma, which is this results from repeated and prolonged exposure to highly stressful events. Examples include cases of child abuse, bullying, or domestic violence. Then you have complex trauma. And complex trauma is the results from exposure to multiple traumatic events. That's complex trauma. So you ever have somebody, you'd be like, and that happened, and that happened too, and that happened. I just paused because I'm thinking about a life coaching client of mine, a past one, that had this complex trauma. Like every time you turn around, and she's been on one of her, it's Valencia, and I'm mentioning her name because she's on this podcast, so you can go down and listen to some of the things that have happened to her, like being burned alive, being raped, just so many different, being abused physically, mentally. She talks about a lot of her traumas, and she still deals with a lot as an adult, but it's an episode on here. She talks about it. I believe she made 2 appearances on the show, and she was also on my other show, Conversations with Kendéll Lenice, and that's, I believe, somewhere on YouTube. It's not on my channel. It was the network that I worked for. It's on there, but those are traumas. And then you have, what are 3 E's? What are the 3 E's of trauma? All right. The 3 E's of trauma: events, experience, and effect. When a person is exposed to traumatic or stressful events, how they experience it greatly influences the long-lasting adverse effects of carrying the weight of the trauma. So again, event, what happened? Experience, well, what happened? How did it make you feel? And then effect, how is it affecting your ability to go on and to move towards a happy, whole, better life? See, people don't understand that. And what really bugs me is when people say, get over it. How can you tell someone who's been hurt to get over it. It doesn't work that way. It takes a lot of healing, a lot of conversations, a lot of crying, a lot of anger, a lot of therapy sessions, life coach sessions, counseling sessions, all three together at once, separately. It takes a lot. And being vulnerable is not easy for someone who has been through traumatic experiences, because a lot of people don't know who to trust, or the people that they thought they could trust, like a parent. We're talking about DMX, like his mom. He probably thought he could trust her, and then she just left him and never came back. Imagine what that does to a child, a young child who, loves his mother, or wants his mother's love, or wants the mother to love them. And, it's noted that his mother was very cruel and mean to him. And that wasn't the only thing that she did. I mean, his story is out there. I'm not telling you something that he wouldn't want anybody to know, because he told the story. Like I said, 20 years ago, he told the story in his book. And I've seen him on talk shows. I've seen him, talk about this often. So you got to think about that. But people want to know, well, how do you heal trauma, right? So first you have to acknowledge that there is trauma, because you can reclaim your life after trauma. There are a lot of ways that you can do it, but you have to acknowledge that the trauma took place and recognize that, you've had sincere trauma in your life. And that's the only way that you're going to be able to begin to heal from it, acknowledging that it is trauma, and acknowledging that in your adult life that the trauma affects you, right? And then you want to try to grab a hold of your life as it is now, seeking help, telling your story, because that does give you some sort of relief, and sometimes you need that. And to tell people around you, hey, this is what happened, and maybe they can have resources, or maybe they can understand you better, or help you understand you better. Taking care of your health and your mental health is so important. Shout out to Taraji P. Henson for her show about mental health on Facebook Watch. It's called Peace of Mind, PEACE of Mind. It's powerful. And I have a journal that's my personal journey of peace, 30-day guided journal workbook. And, I think that helps to try to discover that peace. It'll be available on Amazon.com, like somewhere around April 16th, but it's available right now on Win Publications, WINN Publications.com. And you can get that workbook there, and then it'll be available, and it's free shipping, y'all, free shipping on Win Publications, and then it'll be on .com, and it'll be on Amazon somewhere around April 16th. But I'm saying that is because whatever helps you find your peace and gets you centered, I have a lot of things in there to help you through a lot of different things. And Taraji's show with mental health is, that show, her dedication to mental health and, dealing with issues that you might not have been ready to address and have to address, because this is the thing with issues and trauma and all of that. If you don't address it, it is going to address you, and it's going to come out in a place where you may not want it to come out. So it's best to be proactive instead of reactive about your mental health and the things that you're going through. Also, you want to learn the trueness of what happened, and you have to accept it, meaning accept what happened and not live in a fairy tale land. Just accept, okay, this happened, so how can I remove it from my life? How can I live with it? How can I learn to let go of the self-doubt, the self-worry, the concern, and live with what's happened now? And you want to just fall in love with yourself, for who you are and who you're trying to be, and your growth, even the things. Because sometimes when trauma happens with children, they feel unworthy, they feel dirty, they feel unwanted, they feel undesirable. They have all of these different feelings, and it affects them in their, adulthood. I often say that a lot of adults are walking around in child bodies because they still haven't healed, and they haven't had anybody validate what they've gone through. The worst thing, I've heard people say it, and, well, it didn't happen that way, or it's in your imagination, or you shouldn't feel that way. And that's invalidating someone's feeling and experience. And people do that. So if you don't believe, if you believe, if you whatever, just be there for someone if they come to you. Don't, let them lead the conversations. Let them ask you the questions. Let them be able to share with you without judgment, because somebody might come to you, and you got to be able to be there for someone and not judge someone. And that's what oftentimes people do, is judge it or ask questions or say, well, are you sure, or question it. And it's almost like victimizing the victim all over again. So sometimes you can just be there for someone and allow them to share, or you be that shoulder if they need. But I want to read something before I end about from Psychology Today. 4 ways childhood trauma can affect adults. And I think that this is so important, because we see it all the time. We just might not be able to recognize it in others or yourselves, but you see it. So let me just read, and I'm reading from psychologytoday.com. I'm going to read this article. All right. While there are many after effects of childhood emotional trauma, here we'll look at specifically 4 ways of childhood trauma and how it impacts us as adults. Number 1, they have: as a childhood emotional trauma therapist, I see my patients who carry childhood emotional wounds with them into adulthood. One way these wounds reveal themselves is through the creation of false self. As children, we want our parents to love and take care of us. And I'm reading directly from there. When our parents don't do this, we try to become the kind of child we think they'll love, burying feelings that might get in the way of us meeting our own needs. And we create a false self. The person we present to the world is totally different than who we are. When we bury our emotions, we lose touch with who we really are, because our feelings are an integral part of us. We live our lives terrified that if we let the mask drop, we'll no longer be cared for, loved, and accepted. That makes me sad, because I can think of times where people, I felt that way before, and I haven't experienced any of these childhood traumas, but still things that have happened in my life have affected me, and I'm a quote unquote expert. We're all human, and we're all in this together. And I'm thinking about clients I'm thinking about people where they're terrified to live their lives or to allow the mask to drop, because they'll no longer feel loved or cared for. I felt like that, I think, in my 20s, maybe even 30s. But there's so many people. And now let's go on to 2 before we conclude. Victimhood thinking. Let's get to number 2. Come on, computer. All right. So it says, what we think and believe about ourselves drives our self-talk. The way we talk to ourselves can empower or disempower us. Absolutely. Negative self-talk disempowers us and makes us feel like we have no control over our lives, like victims. We may have we may have been victimized as children, but we don't have to remain victims as adults. So they're saying erase that victimhood way of thinking and try to empower yourself with the great things that you have going on, or I like to add, speak, positivity into existence, speak goodness into existence, speak as if it's so, speak life into yourself. Number 3 they have is passive aggressiveness. Y'all know what that is, right? When children grow up in households where they are the only unhealthy expression of anger, they grow up believing that anger is unacceptable. If you witness anger expressed violently, then as an adult, you might think that anger is a violent emotion and therefore must be suppressed. Or if you grew up in a family that suppressed anger and your parents taught you that anger is on the list of emotions you aren't supposed to feel, you suppress it, and even as an adult who could benefit from anger. So they're saying that anger is a good thing, but if you grew up and anger was the only thing, or anger was suppressed, like we're not supposed to get angry, it's a human emotion, and they're saying to have that. What happens is if they go on to say, what happens if you can't express your anger? If someone who suppresses your upset feelings, you likely already know the answer. Nothing. You still feel angry. After all, like I just said, anger is natural, healthy emotion. It's a natural, healthy emotion we all experience. But instead of resolution that comes with acknowledging your anger or resolving what triggered it, that's the thing. You stay angry. You don't express your feelings straightforwardly, but since you can't truly suppress your anger, you express your feelings through passive aggressiveness. Y'all know the people who do that, who are passive aggressive and just say, like I say, if you big mad, say you big mad. Express your feelings. That's one thing I don't have a problem with doing, is expressing my feelings. And I coach other people to do the same. There's a proper way to do it. You don't lash out. You don't cuss nobody out. If you're trying to be mature about it. Now, if you are angry and if you cuss somebody else out, and if that's what the natural, feeling is, then that's what it is. That's what happens. But you don't want to be passive aggressive about it. Right? So, passivity is number 4. If you were neglected as a child or abandoned by your caretaker, you may have buried your anger and fear in the hope that it would mean no one will ever abandon or neglect you again, right? What happens when children do this is they end up abandoning themselves. Now, listen to this, y'all. We hold ourselves back when we don't feel our feelings. We end up passive and we don't live up to our potential. The passive person says to him or her, I know what I need to do, but I don't do it. When we bury our feelings, we bury who we are. Because of childhood emotional trauma, we have learned to hide parts of ourselves. At the time, that might have helped us, but as adults, we need our feelings to tell us who we are and what we want, and to guide us towards becoming the people we want to be. So it's saying acknowledge it. Say what it is. Like Iyanla says, call a thing a thing. That was Psychology Today. And that was just 4, let me go back up. 4 ways childhood trauma can affect adults. I'll just go over it real quick. The false self, victimhood thinking, passive aggressiveness, and passivity. Those were the 4 that hold back. So now this is the thing about childhood trauma. Everybody has some type of childhood trauma, whether it's a small T, a big T, meaning a small thing or big thing. Even if yours is small to someone else, it might be huge to you. It might stop you from sleeping or dreaming or being the best person you can be, because you can't get past that. But I just want to tell you that you can get past it. You really can. Acknowledging that it happened, seeking help, whether it be a therapist, a counselor, a life coach, once you get further into your healing, and really acknowledging it for yourself. I'm a coach, I'm sorry, but journaling helps. Getting your feelings out. Talking to a trusted friend, like a tried and true trusted friend. Someone that you know that you can trust, that they won't use your past against you or use your trauma against you. That they'll just be there for a sounding board, or someone that can just give you solid advice or give you the loves and the hug that you may need. But acknowledging it is the first step to healing. But some people can't shake the demons. Some people don't know how, and even in my journal, I try to give several different ways, and it's a workbook, and you do your work. And I'm not just suggesting it because I wrote it, but because it really, really, really can help you find that peace. And if you got a lot going on in your head, you need to center yourself and find that peace, and meditate on what you need to do to be a better you, because you don't want the childhood trauma to affect you so much that you can't really have a productive, happy adult life. And that's what I want for all of you, to have a productive, happy adult life. You can't ignore or neglect the fact that you had childhood trauma, but you can heal from it, and you can make it. You can be the person that you've always wanted to be. Going back to DMX, although he's fought demons, as people are saying, and he had to deal with his childhood past and his traumas and all of that, he still was one of the largest rappers out. He still sold millions of records that some people still haven't done to this day. He still achieved a level of success, and he still did something that he sought out to do. He made his dream come true, and in making his dreams come true, he helped others' dreams to come true and to bring others to the light. And through his impact and through his philanthropy and just being a decent human being to other human beings, he saved the lives of others. And like it's been said, he prayed for so many people. And Swiss said, but he didn't pray for himself like he prayed for everyone else. So that's a selfless type of person. That's someone that cared. So with all his impact, he wasn't buying, you ain't see no gold teeth and no jewelry, all of that stuff. You ain't see no Lamborghinis, no Porsches, you didn't see that. Because his thing was people, loving people, pouring into people, So even his hurt self didn't try to hurt someone else, in that case, as an adult. He was hurting himself with the drugs and alcohol, and because of things that happened in his past and that got him hooked, as I told you earlier. But then sometimes people want to numb the pain because the demons, and because of you guys know the mind is a tricky place, and if you don't still your mind, havoc can go on in there. So I just want everyone to just really seek help, protect your mental space, protect your body and your spirit, and know that no matter what you've been through, you can overcome it by acknowledging it and wanting better for your life. And I just want to tell you just to really celebrate life, because there's only one here. So make the best of it. And sometimes, the traumas that we face as people can stop you from living the bountiful life that you so well deserve. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Shine with Kendéll Lenice. Tell someone about the podcast. Play some DMX music. Go on your little playlist and ride out. I know I did in this house, in my daughter's car. We did it. So celebrate DMX and celebrate his life, and celebrate your own life, and give back to someone and do right by someone, first starting with yourself. Remember, you are a star, so don't allow anyone to dim your shine. Until next time, God bless, peace, love, and light.
Shine with Kendéll Lenice. Real talk for real people. Let's shine together. Shine with Kendell Lenice. Real talk for real people. Let's shine together.